Welcome to the AmericanaMusic.com podcast with your host, Sarah Popejoy.
Today on AmericanaMusic.com, we have the privilege of welcoming Jessica Willis Fisher. Her unmistakable vocal, vibrato, and amazing fiddle chops are reminiscent of Alison Krauss in Union Station with the storytelling skills of Dolly Parton. Her first solo appearance on the Grand Ole Opry stage was her 60th. Her book, Unspeakable, Surviving My Childhood and Finding My Voice, followed her debut solo album, Brand New Day, with songs like My History. She is releasing a new single on the 31st of this month. We're so happy to have you as our guest. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you for having me.
I actually came across your music while listening to Spotify.
Cool. Okay.
What's interesting to me is that I didn't know anything about you or your family before I even sent you the email. At first, I just knew about your music, and I thought, man, she's really amazing.
Spotify did the algorithm just like serve up a song of mine.
It was either Spotify or Apple, because a lot of times I'll go into the new Americana playlist.
Yes.
It's really good for me researching all that's out there. And I did live in Nashville for 10 years, even though I'm not there now. When I read about your story, I was like, oh my gosh, and just totally taken aback because you do have quite a story. Last night, listened to your book, and
I know that's not an easy story, so I appreciate that a lot.
Well, I was listening to it and I was like, I felt the need that I needed to listen to the whole thing before we had this interview, because it's such an integral part of the things that you've been through. And it also gives complete new meaning when listening to your music as well, especially your song, My History. For a lot of listeners out there who don't know, your family was in GAC and TLC reality show. So I encourage everybody to actually go check out your book as well, because you did a beautiful job of telling the story, because there's so many emotions attached to it. The cathartic process of writing that book. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, you're kind of, referencing some things. I mean, just a quick look on the internet, going to give you kind of some of the building blocks. Obviously, I have written a whole book. It's called Unspeakable. That is a front nose dive into a whole big story, like in a nutshell. I'm the oldest of 12 kids. I grew up in a homeschooled Christian family. We had a family band that kind of grew over the years. And there were about 4 years where we were, touring full time. We put out albums. We were, as you mentioned, on TV. That family band was called the Willis Clan. We were on the Opry. We did just kind of a little bit of everything. And there was this outside picture that looked one way, like wholesome, happy, big family. How do you do it? Kind of was the vibe. And amidst my whole growing up, my dad also, a little bit of heavy topics here, but my dad was very abusive in just about every way a person can be. And so, growing up homeschooled, growing up in that family band, and although it looked very happy and kind of public, from the outside, there was a lot of control. And it was kind of ended up being like a little mini cult. And I was in my early 20s before it got so bad to where I kind of felt like I'm either going to die here, or this is going to get so, I'm going to kind of lose my sanity, or something has got to give. And it was quite intense to try to get out of that. And there was a period of time that was just really dark. I didn't really have access to other, the rest of the world or other people. And I have gotten a lot of help once I did get out. And I was able to participate in an investigation into my father, and he is now out of the picture. He's in prison, and the family band is no more after a number of years of just reflection and therapy, which I'm kind of coming around to the question that you asked me. I did make the decision to come back to writing and music. And although I had done those things all growing up, my perspective on those things was shifting. I love writing. And the question is like, why do I like writing? Why was I drawn to that? And I had some very early abusive, confusing memories and experiences as a young child. And I think I was drawn to words. I was drawn to art to try to process and express things. And where I'm at is a really kind of empowering, healing sort of place, or at least I'm choosing to do that version of my life going forward, reclaim music in my own right, reclaim my own voice, my own story, which for a number of years there was very kind of co-opted and felt very inauthentic and very, toxic and confusing. And so it's really amazing now to be in a place where for a number of years there felt very impossible. Like it felt like I would never get outside that environment. I would never be able to have a relationship of my own, have, a story of my own and a voice of my own and art of my own that was not tied into my father's control and, just being in that abusive environment all the time, even though you couldn't necessarily see it from the outside. So 2022 is a big year for me. I decided to kind of come back and do something publicly. And initially I put out some music, which was extremely therapeutic for me. And I can't remember if you specifically mentioned, but the album is called Brand New Day. And for me, that felt like a starting over. It felt like a first time ever kind of introducing myself in my own right. But also I personally believe that every day has the potential to be a brand new day. And yet we don't really get fully blank slates in life. Like from the day we arrive on the planet, we are so shaped by the decisions of the people that have come before us. And we don't know what we don't know. What's the difference between nature versus nurture, all of those things. So I reached a point where I said, I can't change the past. I can't get rid of the hardest things that I've been through, but what can I do with the cards that I'm holding, right? And I think that, yes, I've been through some hard things. I try to balance that with learning some of the hardest things I've been through are very common. There's lots of people that go through early childhood abuse, and it's very hard to talk about. And we're all carrying these things around and trying to make sense of them and trying to live our lives and trying to do the best we can. I've also gotten a lot of help. I had many people who believed me when it really counted. They gave me support. I was able to do a lot of therapy through, again, a lot of, wonderful communities here in Nashville. I just wanted to do something with that. That was my decision and something that would try to make the change and the beauty that I wanted to see in the world. And that's really what 2022 was for me. I turned 30. I put out my first record. And then shortly afterwards, my first, my memoir, Unspeakable, Surviving My Childhood and Finding My Voice came out. And it was like, if I never talk about all the crazy, detailed, dark parts of the story, I'll have put it down. And that was just an extension of my own natural therapy that I was doing for myself. And then I shared that with family and people who knew me and got to have conversations and, clarify things and just get a lot of it out. And kind of start this alchemy sort of process where these things that used to be so triggering and hard started to have this empowerment and this positivity, right? And for me, when I thought about, it's one thing to write these songs or write this book, but putting it out in the world, is that a good decision? Is that a bad decision? Is it going to make more net good or net harm in the world? And I have been very privileged enough to be able to talk to people who, just like I was inspired by other people speaking about maybe their stories of abuse or the hardest things they've been through. I now have met people who have told me, I reported my own father, or I, had a situation.
Wow.
Just knowing that we're not alone, right? We can hold those things and be very confused about, why is this happening to me? How do I get out of this? And, there were books that I read, people's stories that I heard, art that I encountered that gave me seeds of hope and like a lifeline at those times. And those are individuals, those are people I may never meet, but I feel like now I get to participate in, kind of paying that forward or giving back in ways that I don't know all the time when a song or a story that I might share could help someone else. But if it helps even just one other person, that's worth it to me. So that's kind of a summation of the whole chapter that kind of established this new section of my life. We could also chat about kind of what's coming forward.
Oh, yeah.
I'm writing more projects. I'm, making more music. And that is always going to be my past. That's always going to be my background, is this family band and the getting out of this really toxic place and owning that and integrating that. But the whole theme of the next chapter that's coming up is just further growth, and just further like celebration of healing. And, I'm 32 now. I am writing things that I didn't think I was going to be writing and exploring different ways of making art. And there's a freedom that just really, it just feels like, coming into a new level of life. And bloom is kind of the theme.
Oh, awesome. The new project that you have coming out 31st of January, is that a single?
Yes. So I have a song that I really like to think a lot before and after making art, like writing a song and thinking about what does this mean for me? How would I like to bring it out into the world? What would I like to accompany it? So I have a full second project that I'm working towards, and we're pretty far along through that. There's a few songs that have come out, some singles that have come out already in this theme that are all going to be bundled into this project. This next song is called Honest. And I just thought, for me, that's how I wanted to begin this new year, was kind of just a declaration and reminder to myself of what I'm doing and why, and what my kind of commitment to myself and the world would be. And I spend a lot of my time, sometimes in different seasons. I got all these different irons in the fire. I'll be doing just straight music stuff, which is lovely and celebratory and just really fun. And I am working on more writing projects. I'm working on a novel. We'll never know if it's going to see the light of day or not. We're trying new things. And I truly believe that, recovery, healing, growth, life, it doesn't happen in a straight line most of the time.
Oh, yeah.
It can feel like, oh man, we've taken a step backwards, or man, I was doing so well, and here's a tricky chapter. And I wrote this song, Honest, kind of reflecting on some of those patterns. And there's an interesting thing when I'm kind of doing some of the advocacy work that I do, where I'm sharing this story saying, I got out, I got help. There's, all this good stuff to look forward to, and to also try to stay in a really authentic, honest place. Because some days it doesn't feel like everything's going very well. To live with big T trauma and chronic abusive upbringing and things like that you were in for years, that just comes up. Your trauma can come up, your memories can come up, issues that you thought were over and done with. It really, I've lived that. Wow, here I am again. I wish it was a straight line. I wish it was simpler, but like, this is the process. This is the journey. And that's what Honest talks about, is, saying, I'm happy. I'm doing great. This is not a lie, what I'm here presenting to you in this moment. But man, it is so hard sometimes. And I'm trying to be kind to myself. I'm trying to put that energy out into the world to say, it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to still be figuring it out. And the only commitment we're doing is we're trying to do that with kindness, and we're trying to do that with honesty, and just share where we really are.
And I think that's one thing that I find very intriguing about, between your book and reading about you as well. It seems like you've really found this, North Star is not the right word, but flagpole or something of truth and honesty, and not hiding behind everything's okay now. I've moved on. You know what I mean? That seems to have been very important to you. Has it helped guide you through recovering?
Yeah, I really think I would take a stab and say that, I think that's really informed by the fact that I've had to admit and recognize that it's kind of like, on a map, you're at a mall, you're at a theme park, you're somewhere, and you see this big map, and you walk up, and the first thing you have to do is find the "you are here" part. Hard to navigate accurately if you're not clear, if there's confusion about where you are. That's a great way to get lost, is not misidentifying where you are in a landscape. And just, it's a misrepresentation or misinterpretation of reality. We're just not rooted in the truth or reality. So for me, a big part of that was recognizing that I had been a part of something that was not authentic and not true, and was really toxic. And then to examine, there were parts of that were absolutely not my choice. I did not actually, with consent and with clarity and with agency, start a family band with my siblings. That was something that was not chosen for us. Going on TV, there was just, and for many of us too, this isn't just I'm weird in this aspect. the choices that are made when we're children by, if we have parents and caregivers of some kind that are directing our lives, growing up is kind of reflecting on, hey, I would have done things differently, or where does my responsibility for my choices and my actions start to, kind of take precedent. And for me, that was really delayed because I was in my early 20s. I was 23, 24, and just reflecting on, wow, there's like a double, triple life that's been going on for years. I pretend like I'm okay when I'm not. I don't even know what I think and feel half the time. So there was this big kind of wake up moment for me where I had to say, how do I want to live? What sort of person do I want to be? And how does one do that? Because I don't really feel like I've had good examples of congruency is another term that came up, which just, having what you think, what you say, and what you do, and what all kind of harmonize as opposed to being in conflict time. And so again, kind of that commitment or that theme coming through for you, for example, and seeing my art and stuff like that is really confirming and encouraging for me, because that is a big driver for me. And separate from whether anyone else sees that, that is something that I feel like I need to have to just try to be a healthy person and to reflect that it can be hard, even if you don't have the weird family band and reality TV sort of part of the story. With social media, with being any sort of performing artist these days, it can be very hard to hold on to reality in general, or like our truth or who we are as a person. We can feel like a commodity. We can feel like the pressure to do what other people want or be who other people want to be and make a prettier story than is real. I think for years, authenticity has been a buzzword, whether they're talking that, people are talking about how to make social media content or what really resonates with fans. But the lived version of that, it's again, a commitment to like a way of life. It usually requires a lot of courage, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of courage to go against other outside pressures. And I think that we find it very hard to do that possibly in this day and age, because there's a lot of forces that will kind of go against that. And in the first version, in the first like album and stuff that I did, I kind of made some visual symbols and things for me that I wanted to follow. And it was interesting, you were saying like North Star, and like you were kind of like referencing things. For me, I thought of a compass, and I thought of, wherever you go, what is the internal, like no one else can decide, or should, I think, decide for you what your life can and should be. And that was really kind of mind blowing for me because, it was a chance to say, all right, we're going to slow down. We're going to go inward. We're going to do a lot of processing. We're going to try to figure this out, because it's no one else's responsibility or opportunity then that's for me. That's for me to work out for the rest of my life. It's an empowering thing. It's a kind of a scary thing, but it has a lot of that potential, a lot of that energy. And that's what I was using, I think, and circling everything around is this kind of grounded inner knowing and a setting out on a new adventure and a new way of being. And I definitely still resonate with all of that. I feel like that's kind of like a foundation, and I'm building on top of it now. So I have a lot of like nature and kind of seasonal and cyclical sort of imagery that's in this new record. And I think I have a song called Seeds. I have a song called June. I have a song called Dogwood. And there's a lot of, the term like Rome isn't built in a day kind of comes to mind, but except the forest version of that, right? Mm-hmm. Seeds. What do we take the time to cultivate? What are, there's certain things that we can't fight. Like you can't control the weather. You can't control, there's a lot that you can't control outside, but you can cultivate, a truly beautiful life. And every bloom and every season is different. Every flower is different, and like being proud and grounded and celebratory of our individual things and our wounds and our triumphs and things, and then recognizing that beauty in other people. And I feel like that's really kind of a way of processing and looking at the place that I am now in my life and in my art.
That's really cool. I think it says a lot too that you took that time to do that as opposed to just running back out there.
It kind of felt like, and I've said this in other interviews and stuff before, but a little bit like, look, sometimes things are so bad, you just got to go to the emergency room. Life has to stop. Yeah, you have a job. Yeah, you have a family. Yeah, you have all these. But guess what? Unless you drop everything and go get that emergency surgery, you're not going to be here, right? So it shifts your priority. So for me, I felt like I was kind of in the emergency room of life for a few years. And again, super lucky and grateful to look back and be like, I had good providers and good therapy and good community and people that were there for me, helped give me that safe space to do a lot of really hard work that had been deferred for basically 20 years. It is kind of, we are extra hard on ourselves many times, but I would never look at someone else and be like, hey, get on your feet. It's been 6 months. Get over the previous 20 years of your life, make sense of everything and move forward because I'm waiting on you getting back on your feet, and still to this day, I will be far along in my life until I kind of cross that threshold of being out of that environment as long as I was in it. So I still try to, on tough days and tough times, say, wow, like, look how far we've come. Look what I've been able to do. Look what all the time and potential that's still ahead of me. But I don't feel like I'm in that emergency room spot anymore. And now it's about, well, how do we be sustainable? How do we be realistic? And again, kind of circling back to this next song, that's what Honest is saying, I think, is saying, hey, look how far we've come, look at this progress, and understand that, it isn't going to be easy. It's a long-term commitment. I think if you've sat down and thought about how you want to live as a human being and what you want to build your brand, your art, your story, what you want to spend your time doing, you make a deep commitment to that's an ambitious thing to try to say, I know that this is tough. If it was easier, everybody would and could do it. That's why we need community. That's why we need to kind of have these different tools in our toolbox to just figure out how to be human because it's messy most days.
That's for sure. When I was listening to your book, which I'm glad I listened to the epilogue because I don't always listen to the epilogues. It was a very good one. I recommend everybody listen to it. There was a few things that you said that they hit me so hard. One of them was just because you lived it doesn't mean you automatically know it, understand it, or learn from it.
Ooh, cool that out to you. Yeah, I very passionately believe that. We don't always have the time in real time to process really big things. Life kind of comes at you in unpredictable ways. You can have a death, a health crisis, a societal crazy thing, and then we just have to survive, right? If we don't get the privilege of having that emergency room experience and we're just trying to survive, it takes a concerted effort to kind of look back and process those things. And I think wisdom and healing and empathy are all things that are kind of waiting for us potentially on the other side of doing the hard work of processing those things. But a lot of it doesn't just happen on accident. I truly think you can go through your whole life and never kind of learn some of the deepest lessons and reflections that your own life has kind of stored up for you. And so there's that reward for us. And then we can sometimes pass that on to other people. And I just think that's really valuable. And I don't think we can just kind of sit and say, well, I went through it. I was there. I know it. I have somehow milked every positive thing from it and doing the effortful work. So I think that's, it's a trade-off. It's a commitment. It's a hard thing. It's a process that you have to go through and let it change you.
Yes, definitely. I'm sure everybody has this, but I think sometimes women more than men when it comes to busy work, not allowing ourselves to see the things that we've gone through. It's so funny because after I listened to your book this morning, I was like, I haven't been doing my morning walks. And so I did that this morning because we need time to reflect on things.
Yeah, I resonate with the idea that I just think that there's a lot of things that can be assumed that it's, the woman's responsibility to do a lot of work and a lot of labor, especially kind of in the environment that I grew up. And there's sort of this idea that the general roles that was presented under kind of a religious, conservative, fundamentalist thing is well, the men, they go make money, there's certain roles that are for them, and there's certain roles that are for women. It's the house, it's children. And like a lot of those things can be very, making finances to exist in the world also has this element, but there's a lot of things like day to day that has like a black hole sort of element. Like it will never be done. Like you do all the dishes, you do all the laundry, male or female, whoever you are, you do all those things. And just to keep living, there's going to be more of those things. So how do you kind of make a balance of doing those things and yet making room for maybe, I don't know, big dreams, things like that. And for me, I don't have children. There are some ways that at this point, I'm TBD. I don't know always what I think about that, but I am pursuing these big things that I feel called to do, that I feel very passionately about. Like, I don't want to die and not have done these things. Just the like corporeal, mundane things about being human that can feel like chores, like they're framed that way. And to try to shift that and say, hey, this is just about care. These are care tasks that I can do. I have ones that I like to do, ones that I don't like to do, but I do like to be fed. I do like to be warm. I do like to be clothed. And, maybe the creative tear of like big dreams versus like, the non-glamorous parts of just life. That's something we all work out in different ways. And I feel like in some ways I've kind of rejected some of the, I certainly don't want to be put in the box that I was grown up to be told, like, this is all you're good for. And yet I don't, I think that part of being healthy and grounded is to make peace with those things and even figure out a way to make those beautiful and fulfilling, and not to assume that that's all I can do, but also that I shouldn't have any relationship with those things. That's kind of philosophical.
All about your approach. Tell me about how music has kind of helped you, which, by the way, your fiddle playing is amazing.
Cool. It's certainly part of my growing up. It's part of my artistry. I grew up playing Irish fiddle. There's a little piano and like singing in church and singing with my family before there was any kind of inkling of a band or anything like that. And I was born on the south side of Chicago, so there was a lot of Irish music and Irish dance and stuff like that. And I do have Irish heritage in my extended family, like my grandparents and great grandparents, but the dance led to the music, and I totally wanted to quit fiddle at certain points in my life. I'm super glad I stuck with it, because I think that the rhythms and the melodies of that really old folk music is with me, and everything that it really informs my artistry. And I'm very interested in like having deep roots. And for me, some of the deepest musical roots that I do have are in this kind of, a lot of times, instrumental Irish music that's kind of like the fiddle part, and some of that really old storytelling where these are 100-year-old songs. We don't even know who wrote them, but we are continuing on in this tradition that's hundreds of years old. And these things have stuck around because they are so resonant with just those core emotions of sadness or fear or desire or love or hope. So for me, the house music kind of, practically speaking, Irish music was one of the earlier things that I got introduced to. And I just think generally in, I don't know, my personality, the way that I kind of show up as a artist in the world is, for me, it's about the writing. It was, participating in a tradition, but then wanting to kind of be in this sort of communion with, I learned these old songs, and then it awakens in me the desire to make something that can keep that tradition alive and keep going. Lots of folk music of every stripe and ilk I am very drawn to, and I love seeing the similarities. I have a Swedish friend that was one of I also have heard it in passing, like it'll grab my ear, but like Swedish folk music, there's a lot of fiddle playing and like string music in Swedish folk music, and I'm obsessed with it.
That's awesome.
It's really fun to explore. And when I listen to, for example, country music, which I don't feel that I'm like fully will ever feel like, yes, I am one of you. I grew up with this. It's in my blood. But it is by extension of that kind of Celtic and Irish and old folk music. And when I listen to some of my favorite Dolly songs, I listened to Nickel Creek growing up, Alston Krauss and Union Station. It's like you can hear those resonances, the little details in the flip of the vocal, or those songs that may be modern, but they sound like they're hundreds of years old. And that's just kind of always what I'm seeking out. I think generally music is such a great tool for truth telling, for healing, for celebration, and just like having a good time, like all those things. It's what a wonderful tool. It transcends time, place, language, like all of that. And sometimes it's just a melody that fiddle's playing that is hitting the spot, and it's saying something that nothing else can. Love a good lyric, love a good song. I just love playing with all those different tools because it's a really deep well.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I remember I took vocal lessons when I was younger. I remember going, oh, you learn some of those folk songs, those really old folk songs. And I remember thinking, oh, hey, that's what Nancy Griffith is doing right there. And pulling those things out,
Yeah. It's like a signal of, it's almost like something that you can trace. And you say, this is a descendant of that, or this is a newer iteration of something that we learn, we absorb, whether it's very structured and official or just through osmosis, where we just hear it and we imitate and then we put our own spin on it. And, a new version of that is born. I love participating in that.
Very, very, very cool. So your new music, where do you record?
Okay, so this new record, the bulk of the tracking took place at Starstruck Studios in Nashville.
Oh, that's Reba's old place.
I think so. That's what I heard. We did the first record at Blackbird. Amazing experience. Starstruck's where it worked out this time. I've worked with, both for the first record and this record, Mr. Ben Fowler. Super cool dude. It's a really great kind of just relationship that we have in collaboration. He really believes in me. I swear this album, it's really down to the support of a number of different people. My father-in-law is my manager. He's like true believer and just really helpful. And Ben Fowler, this album definitely would not be coming into the world or exist at this time without his very strong belief and just a lot of him showing up and doing the work. Really cool band that the other people that have been involved musically, just really excited. I've worked with Brian Sutton again, and he can kind of play a little bit of everything. He definitely has those really deep roots. We do a lot of stuff over at Ben's house. So we actually only live half a mile away from each other. And I swear that was not on purpose, but when I did figure that out, I was very happy. And so I'm over there. I'm going over there right after this. And we're finishing up. We're working on some harmonies and overdubs and stuff. And most of these songs on this project are fairly new. They've come in the last few years. And I actually, since 2022 was a big year, multiple years of prep went into making 2022 the year of putting out a record, putting out an album and all of that. 2023 was weird because it felt like, all right, well, I did nothing this year compared to the previous year. But I did a lot over the last year and a half, 2 years. And we've been working on this one for a minute now, but basically wrote 3 or 4 projects in that time.
Wow.
The first record, Brand New Day, was if I do nothing else, if I sing no other songs, what do I have to do now? I don't have to figure out my whole life. Let's just do the one next right thing. And that was a very interesting, it really helped make that project what it is. And now I'm like, how do I make music for the rest of my life? Because I never stop doing this, and it's just part of who I am. It's part of what I need to do. And what I love for it to go out and be super conventionally successful in whatever that means. Yes, we're not going to do anything to shortchange that, but it really just is a drive to make this art and put it out and trust that it's going to do what it's supposed to do. We are closing in. We're 9 months pregnant with this album.
Oh, that's great. That's great. To me, in songwriting, I've always thought that there's a time also for internalizing.
Oof.
And that is part of the songwriting process, and to never discount it.
I so agree, because that's just been my experience. I'm not even saying everyone else is the same, but I so strongly believe that because I go through it all the time. And I actually had a late edition, one of the most recent songs that I'm really hoping kind of goes on maybe a deluxe version of this album. It's called Your Season. The first line is who blames the flower for the rain? You can't have a bloom. Like the roots have to go down. Then the plant grows up. Who gets mad at the dogwoods for like not blooming in November? It's not its time. Like we have to go inward. We have to have seasons of rest, of processing, just embrace that. And instead of trying to fight our own natures and the nature that we see around us, to let those lessons in, let them in, let's absorb them, and let's kind of learn from, whether we call it hibernation or rest. Like there's a lot of stuff happening during that time. It's a very important part of the process.
Yeah.
Pick which parts of the process you want. I only want the growth. I only want the bloom, the warm weather and the this and that. We have the most amazing seasons here where, and I recognize different places in the world are different, but there's such a visual, felt shifting of seasons here. And I really love that. And I try to pay attention to that in my life. And when I feel like I want to get to the next part or I want to skip this phase, it's more like, okay, what are the lessons I need to be learning right now? What's this work that's happening that's maybe not as flashy or as public? But, as an artist, you do go through cycles. You're writing. You can't just like skip to putting out music. You have to actually make it first. You have to write it. You have to figure out how it should sound. And so, yeah, I feel like, wanting to go from, okay, what's the next record? It's like, all right, this is part of the process. It's figuring out what I have to say, figuring out all those things. And of course, the bloom part is fun.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful and showy in a way that the rest isn't there. But that's when you get to share everything that you have been working on, everything that's been happening in here and kind of behind the scenes.
I love it. That is so awesome.
Well, thank you. I'm very excited.
I've really, really enjoyed our conversation today. Are there any projections for when the album released?
Yeah, we're working towards this spring, so not far off. And we've got Honest coming out. And then I think we've selected the next song after, which is like one of my favorites. It's a folky in its structure. It's a love song, but it's also kind of got this, like, I don't know, call it what you want, indie, Americana, folky, poppy thing. I'm really excited about it. Bring that one out, and then the record in the spring. And then I do feel like there's a few more songs that, as it happens many times, you're wrapping something up, and then these other ideas or these songs come out and go, excuse me, I'm supposed to be part of this. So we're trying to really let that be, get to that full, flesh out all those ideas.
Here's a short clip to next week's interview with Jeff Trott.
I mean, I didn't really know who she was. She hadn't even made a record at the time. But so I'm collecting my stuff. I go out to my car in the parking lot, loading everything up. And she came running out into the parking lot and knocked on my passenger window and says, hey, would you like to record some vocals with me and Bill? We just wrote this song called Can't Cry Anymore. That was my intro to Sheryl Crow.
And that concludes our program. Thank you so much for listening to AmericanaMusic.com. Be sure to check out our website, and you can find all the artists we interview's music on our Spotify playlist.